Hey guys, it's Sunday, so you know what that means. This video today is going to be focused on what is consent. As important as consent is, I feel like we don't talk about it enough. So it's understandable if many people don't really know what is consent and what isn't consent. Many of you probably have heard of the saying, no means no. But I feel like that doesn't really explain the picture of what's going on. In the dictionary, consent means permission for something to happen or an agreement to something. That's a very broad statement, and it doesn't really explain in detail what consent really is. Some people get worried that consent will ruin the mood or it'll be awkward to talk about, which is far from true because it's so important. If anything, it should be more positive to talk to your partner about consent to make sure both partners are happy and there is good communication. Consent can be between two people who just met. It can be between two people who are married. It can even be between two people that are in a relationship. Let's talk about what consent looks like. It means communicating every step of the way. For example, if you're hooking up with somebody, ask them if it's okay to take off their shirt instead of just pulling it off and assuming that it's okay. Respecting that even though they don't say no doesn't mean that it means yes. And breaking away from gender roles. Girls are not the only ones that want to take it slow. There's some guys that want to do the same. What does consent not look like? Assuming that dressing sexy or flirty or showing too much skin doesn't mean that they're consenting to anything. If they say yes while they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that's not really consenting because you are under the influence of something that may or may not put you in the right state of mind. Or if you feel pressured or afraid to say that you don't want to have sex or something, that's really not consenting. So my point is that if a woman looks like this, no clothes, nothing, walks up to you, does that give you the right to touch her? No. Consent is voluntary, sober, imaginative, enthusiastic, creative, mutual, honest, and it's a verbal agreement. And consent also doesn't mean that if they're underage and they say it's okay, that they're giving consent, because it depends on the age limit they have in your county or in your state. But somebody who is below the age of consent cannot obviously consent. So 1 would be age, 2 would be if they are intoxicated or using drugs, 3 if they feel pressured. And those are people that cannot consent. The only real affirmation that they give you that means that they're giving you consent is if they tell you. And sometimes you can just ask them certain questions to see if they're comfortable or not. You can ask them if there's anything that they don't want to do. Ask them if they want to go any further. Consent is when two people are engaging in a sexual activity and they both agree to it. But at any point, a person can say stop. You would have to stop, because after that point, even though let's say you've already been 30 minutes into the hookup or 30 minutes into the sexual encounter, if they tell you that they want to stop, they are no longer giving you consent. Consent is also important because it can turn into rape allegations and things like that. So it's very important to have consent before going into sexual activity. Also, remember 3 things. If they're underage, they cannot consent to sexual activity. If they're intoxicated or under drugs, they cannot consent. And if they're disabled, they cannot consent. It is important to have consent, and I think it's such a positive thing in relationships because you're asking them if they're comfortable with certain things. Especially me. I am somebody who is uncomfortable with certain things. So it would be awesome if my significant other would ask me, hey, are you comfortable for me doing this or that? And I would tell them yes or no. I think it's so important, especially to me, because there's things that I don't like doing in bed, and that's okay. So remember, you guys, consent is really important, and remember that we are all human. Have a great week. I'll see you next time.